In this emotional story, a woman faces a deep inner conflict as she forms an unexpected bond with her horse, filling the loneliness she feels in her marriage. What begins as an innocent connection spirals into emotional turmoil, leading to self-reflection and the need for healing. Will she be able to repair her relationship? Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. It was a quiet afternoon when everything changed. The house was eerily still, with only the soft sound of hooves outside breaking the silence. I had never imagined that something so unexpected could happen behind those closed doors. It wasn't the kind of betrayal anyone would think of, but it shook me to the core. What started as a simple moment of connection with our horse turned into something much more than I ever expected. My husband had been away, and I found myself spending more time alone than I ever thought I would. At first, it was innocent, a way to fill the silence, but as the days went on, something shifted. Our horse, a creature I had always admired from afar, began to fill a gap I didn't even realize was there. I could never have predicted that this innocent interaction would lead to something that would change everything between us. The trust I thought I had in both my marriage and in myself was suddenly called into question. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, but deep down, I knew there was no turning back. The bond we shared was becoming something more than just a connection between a woman and an animal. How could I face my husband when he returned? What would happen to my marriage when the truth came out? Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of a story that no one would believe. As the days passed, I couldn't help but notice the growing tension in our household. My husband had always been away for work, but this time it felt different. It was as though the distance between us had grown, not just physically, but emotionally as well. When he was home, it felt like we were merely going through the motions, speaking only when necessary. He seemed distracted, always preoccupied with something else. I felt more alone than ever before, and that's when the connection with the horse started to feel comforting, even though I knew something about it was off. The barn was my escape, a place where I could clear my mind and find some peace in the midst of the chaos. But as I spent more time there, I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way the horse seemed to understand me. The way it would nudge me when I was feeling down, as though it knew exactly what I needed. I had never thought of it this way, but with each passing day, our bond seemed to deepen in a way that felt almost dangerous. I tried to ignore the feeling, telling myself that I was just lonely, that it was harmless. But the more I convinced myself it was nothing, the more it felt like I was crossing a line. Could a person become too attached to an animal? Was this just a weird phase? Or was something more troubling happening without my realizing? As I sat there, looking into the horse's eyes, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was about to happen. Something that I wouldn't be able to undo. The more time I spent with the horse, the more I felt a shift within me. Something I couldn't explain, but couldn't deny either. I'd never been the type of person to act impulsively, to let emotions lead me. But with him, there was something magnetic, pulling me in deeper each day. I kept telling myself it was just loneliness, just the quiet whispers of a heart that felt neglected. But as the days wore on, those whispers grew louder, and the line between comfort and something darker started to blur. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Who could I trust with such a strange, inexplicable feeling? The shame of it was overwhelming. It wasn't just about what I felt toward the horse. It was about what it was doing to my marriage. I couldn't even look at my husband without feeling like I was betraying him, not in the way most people would think, but in a way that felt even worse. There was this secret growing inside me, one I couldn't let go of, one I couldn't explain. The more I tried to fight it, the stronger the pull became. Every time my husband returned, I would feel this unsettling mixture of guilt and longing, but he never seemed to notice the distance between us. He was so absorbed in his own world, his work, his own distractions. He didn't see the way I had changed, the way my focus had shifted. It was as if we were both living in two different realities, both unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Would he even care if he knew? Would he understand what had happened? Or would he just see it as another sign of my failing? I had no answers, only more questions, and a fear that what I was hiding could ruin everything. The tension was becoming unbearable. I couldn't escape the constant pull between my duty as a wife and the overwhelming connection I felt toward the horse. Each day felt like a battle inside me, one I wasn't sure I could win. My husband had started asking more questions, his suspicion growing as I became more withdrawn. But it wasn't just the secrets I was hiding. It was the feeling that I was no longer the person I used to be. One evening, while I was in the barn, I heard my husband's car pull into the driveway. I froze, my heart racing as a wave of panic washed over me. He'd been away for longer than usual, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like he was really here. I didn't know if I was ready for him to see the changes in me, to confront the reality of what had been building behind closed doors. I stayed in the barn, the horse beside me, my mind racing with thoughts of what would happen when he found out the truth. The heavy sound of footsteps echoed from outside, signaling his approach. I had moments to decide. Should I face him now? Tell him everything? Or should I keep hiding, pretending that everything was fine? The horse nuzzled my shoulder gently, as if sensing the storm inside me. But the question remained. Could I even face my own reflection, let alone him? And what if, in the end, it wasn't my husband who I would have to confront, but myself? The barn door creaked as it slowly opened, and I turned to see my husband standing in the doorway, his face tense and unreadable. I couldn't hide anymore. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't yet know what. His eyes scanned the room, lingering on the horse, then back to me. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. He didn't speak, but I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes, and it made my stomach twist. His gaze shifted from the horse to me again, the unspoken question hanging between us. What have you been hiding? I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came. The weight of the situation was too much. I could feel the horse moving gently beside me, as if offering some kind of comfort, but it only made the moment feel even more surreal. What had I become? His patience was wearing thin, and the anger that was starting to show in his expression made me realize just how close I was to losing everything. Could I finally tell him the truth? Or would this moment lead to an irreversible rupture in our relationship? My heart raced as I braced myself for whatever was about to happen next. His voice broke through the silence, sharp and accusing. What is this, really? What's going on between you and the horse? The question stung more than I expected. I could see his frustration boiling over. But I also knew it wasn't just about the horse. It was everything. The distance, the secrets, the things I couldn't explain. I swallowed hard, stepping forward, trying to find the right words, but nothing seemed to make sense anymore. It's not what you think, I said, my voice trembling. It's been lonely. I never meant for it to go this far. He was quiet, his face softening as he processed what I'd said. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, he would understand. But then, as if on cue, the horse moved closer, nudging me with its head. And that's when the truth hit me. This wasn't just about loneliness. This wasn't just about the horse. It was about something deeper, something I hadn't wanted to face. In a sudden flash of clarity, I realized it wasn't my husband I was afraid to face. It was myself. What I'd done, where I'd let my emotions take me, was a reflection of a part of me that needed healing. I looked at my husband, then back at the horse, and whispered, "I need to fix this. All of it." But before I could speak another word, he turned and walked away, leaving me in the barn, alone once again, with the painful truth hanging in the air. The days that followed were a blur of guilt and reflection. My husband didn't return to the barn that night, and we barely spoke for weeks. I knew he needed space, just as I needed time to figure out what had happened to me, to us. I spent countless hours in the barn, not with the horse, but with my own thoughts. The bond I had felt with the animal was never about him. It was about the emptiness I hadn't been willing to face in myself. I eventually reached out to a therapist. I had to address the deeper issues that had led me to that point: the loneliness, the neglect, the emotional disconnect. It wasn't just the horse. It was a cry for attention, for connection, for love that I hadn't received, and I realized that I had to be the one to fix it. Slowly, my husband and I began to rebuild, though things were never the same. We talked more, we listened more, and together we found a way forward. The horse was still part of our life, but now I saw him for what he truly was, an innocent being who had no place in the mess I had created. In the end, the story wasn't just about infidelity. It was about understanding, healing, and learning how to love myself first before I could love anyone else.